Hello everyone, welcome to Mydbops open source database Meetup16 recorded live in Bangalore. Mydbops excels in open source database management, offering tailored solutions for MySQL, MariaDB, MongoDB, Postgres, TiDB, Cassandra, and more. Mydbops organizes meetups to facilitate knowledge sharing, networking, and collaboration among professionals in the field of open source database management. Coming back to the recording, Mydbops was thrilled to present Deepak Mahto, founder of DataCloudGaze Consulting, who discussed all the key Postgres extensions every DBA should know when migrating to Postgres from another database. He delved into different Postgres extensions that enhance migrations for customers or users moving from different relational databases like Oracle. This session offered valuable insights for anyone interested in database management. Without further ado, let's dive into the insightful presentation.
Just before starting, how many of you know Postgres or have used Postgres in your day-to-day work? That's good to know. And how many of you knows the extension part of Postgres? Okay, so the idea is knowing Postgres is a good value add, but knowing extension, our acceleration, are very important factor that help you to make a lot of feature in your databases that the customer or partner wants. And today we'd like to understand how some of those features make your migration production ready and have those accelerated to be production ready, right? So making any databases as production ready, it's not always about meeting a couple of those factors. There are lots of factors that come into picture. And we'll see some of the extension over here that will help us to achieve those. I like to call myself as a database guy, 15 plus year of experience working primarily on cloud with Amazon, with Google Cloud, and later on decided to start my own firm. So I'm currently working as a founder in DataCloudGaze Consulting. We primarily help customer achieve migration on PostgreSQL. I'm based out in Mumbai, so good to have here in Bangalore because the weather here is much better than what we have back in Mumbai. So good to be in Bangalore. And I do publish a lot of blogs. So if in case you're following me, you'll see a lot of blogs that I'm publishing, which I keep on releasing on tips and tricks. So do follow those in case. Cool. Okay. Now, the agenda is pretty simple. We just want to understand what the extension is, how we want to use it as part of different phase, and how it will help us to achieve different feature that we have in as part of migration. Okay. Now, if you look at this slide, it says that what is extension, but I'm attached a Twitter which says that extension is actually most underrated feature of PostgreSQL. It's basically extend the overall functionality that database offer, and it help you to add some of the feature on top of your databases in which you can achieve those functionality. And to just give you an overview, right? So before this talk, I wanted to curate some most known extension that you have in Postgres and bring all of those together. So you're seeing a list of category that we have for different extensions and also some top extension around those. I just want to take your attention to PG vector, which is today's norms of having or storing vector into your databases. That is also an extension. In total, we have 200 plus extensions that enhance the overall functionality of databases. Those are from index to table optimization, to logging, to maintenance, all of those. So the ecosystem is pretty huge. Does that mean we have to know each one of those? Answer is no. I have curated some of the lists and we'll walk through some of those to understand it better. Okay, so creating an extension is primarily just using a command where you load your extension into database. And the importance of this slide is some of the extensions are categorized as trusted and untrusted. In simple terms, what it means that do you want your user to access an HTTP URL over the internet from the database? Answer is no, because that might be something which is untrusted, right? So in case your extension allow you not to do that, give you a space where it is restricting a lot of security related access, that's a trusted extension. And in case you know a lot of managed service that we have on cloud, be it RDS, Amazon Aurora, Cloud SQL, or Azure, those does not allow untrusted extension. So idea is you can create extension either as a super user or as a normal user, but you can only create a trusted extension on a managed service. When you have your own instance, you can create any extension that you want. Okay, and over here, some fun fact, right? So when we talk about any databases, we also talk about the procedural language that database offer. Now we have PLPG-SQL, which is a procedural language for Postgres. And the fun fact is that is also an extension. So whenever you create any new database in Postgres, you will have one extension pre-installed, and that is PLPG-SQL. And that is because that extension is part of template1 database in Postgres. And every database that you create, take template1 as a reference and create an extension out of it. So this info is important because in case you want to create an application for your customer, which need to have some pre-install extension, you can always install those on template1 database of Postgres. As and when anyone create a new database, they'll get all those extensions pre-shipped. So that's how default extension is also shipped. Just to move further, as we are talking about procedural language, there are different procedural languages that are also available as part of extension in Postgres, which means that I can write code in Java, TCL, Perl, Python U, all of those languages, and also put that in my procedural logic. And how those are available to you is through extension. Now let's talk about the first extension and the use case of its migration. When we talk about databases, we also have to talk about performance. As a DBA, most of our time goes to have an application or database up and running, but also meet the business performance. Now what pgstat statement does, which is one of my favorite extensions that I always have in any database that I've created for any of my customers, be it on cloud or on-prem, is to give you a view to understand how different queries are performing. Over here, I have just run a tool which is pgbench, simulated some load, and then use pgstat statement as a view to get the performance out of it. So it is something which I'll advise as a de facto extension to have every time for most of the database that we create on Postgres. So we basically give you a performance view in terms of execution time, IOPS, mean time, rows, and all of those. So it gives you a clear-cut idea on how it is happening. Now, if I just want to take this example further, and if you look at the code that I have attached as part of sample, this code has a line which does some count. And if you understand procedural language, you have a sense that this count might be a problematic part because you're doing an aggregation of rows in a procedural logic. Now, whenever this procedure runs thousands of times, you will know that procedure is taking time, but how to know that which part of procedure or which part of PLPG logic is taking the considerable time, that's what extension come into picture. Now, over here, our count is a problematic part, but within a procedure. Now, with PLPG, with pgstat statement track option, I can also track the nested calls and get a performance out of it. So the query output that you're seeing in the slide over here, it is trying to give you a couple of information as part of what is happening with the databases as part of procedural logic. pgstat statement give you a top level flag, which tell you whether it is a nested call or a top level call. So if you look at couple of output that I'm putting over here, if I use my top level in my filter, I can understand what are all my nested calls that is happening and it is problematic. So whenever a developer comes to you and say that, look, my application or database is not performing well, most of the time it might not be a standalone SQL. It might be a procedural block that someone has built to run from application and databases. And a simple extension enabling it on your databases with some flag help you to uncover those. But over here, the tips is not to do it in production as default. Do it for the session that you're tracing, or at least on test or pre-prod environment. Because capturing each and every nested call will put an unnecessary overhead to overall database execution. Now, as a I'm looking into performance dedicatedly for lots of time, and hope you all are aware of hints in performance. I think somewhere along in our experience, we might have used it. Hints give me an opportunity to tune a query without actually changing anything. So basically, an hints is an additional smart comments which define the access control, access path, or how you want a table or join to happen. With Postgres, we have this feature available as part of hint, which is PG hint plan. So if you look at the hint that is over here, I'm just doing a full scan on a table, influencing by a hint. So it gives you an opportunity as a DBA to take care of performance for some cases where you cannot do it post gathering stats, post rewriting queries, and the easiest way is to just add hint and have your PG hint plan already available. And over here, I'm referencing a lot of extension, right? So some of the extension already come as shipped in the Postgres as default. You don't have to install it again and again. So PG stat statement, PG hint plan are a couple of those. And knowing this hint enable you to take a necessary action whenever an issue arises, right? So I always say that whenever you want your database to be ready, it has to be ready for performance, it has to be ready for monitoring. So you should have those extensions pre-created because you can load them as in when you need to analyze some of the stuff. Okay. Moving further, as part of performance category itself, there's a concept called as invisible indexes. Thus, all of you or some of you are aware of it, what exactly it is? So just to simplify in simple terms, as the name implies invisible, it means that it does not exist, but at the same time it exists. Somewhat like Mr. India, which you can hear but you cannot see, right? So the idea is that whenever we want to do any performance tuning, you have to test out some of the object creation before actually making those objects effective. Which means that if I want to make sure that my indexes will optimize my query, I can use and create those without impacting the whole query. So if you look at the example, over here we are creating a sample index, which is on ID, and using explain option of Postgres, which is very standard across RDBMS. When you say explain, it basically tells you how an optimizer or an underlying engine will execute your query. So whenever you have any index which is hypothetical or invisible, it gives you an opportunity to test whether my query will use it or not before actually making that index effective for the whole application, whole database, or actually using it. And this hypothetical indexes or hypo-PG, lots of cloud providers are internally using and creating a new service which is called as index advisory. So you use hypo-PG as a platform and create an index advisory, which internally check what is my best index to have, verify whether it will be used or not, and recommend back to the user for improving the query performance. So this is the base for lots of index advisory services which lots of cloud provider or different platform are giving. Now moving further, when we talk about migrations to Postgres, there are lots of migration to Postgres that happen from different databases. And Oracle has been a top contender to moving to Postgres. I myself have been doing a lot of migration for Oracle to Postgres for a lot of customers. Now we have an extension which is Aura FCE, which basically emulate or simulate a lot of function and wrappers which are native to Oracle. What it means that in case you talk about any basic function like sysdate, in simple term, it will try to give you a date for your query or at your timestamp that you're running. But does the function follows an ANSI standard across databases? Which means that a function which Oracle gives might not be available in MySQL or Postgres. So what Aura FC does is it accelerates your migration by wrapping all of those needed function which is required in Oracle available as part of Postgres directly. So it accelerates the migration for you, which means that I create an extension as Aura FC. I don't have to migrate each and every function like NVL, decode, addments, all of those that you see in a typical migration. And also one of the very advantages that whenever we talk about any migration with any customer, changes is not always within the database. It is also at an application tier. Application query has to be changed. The way they are calling has to be changed. But with Aura FC, you limit those changes. In case a query is using those functions, we don't have to change it because that query will work as it is post-migration to Postgres as well. And that's what Aura FC as an extension provide for customer coming from Oracle to Postgres. Now, there are lots of new service coming in Postgres, which is called as foreign data wrapper. What this means that If you remember this initial slide where I showed there was a section which was talking about foreign data wrapper. Now what are new services which are coming is that you spin up a database, which is a Postgres database, and that database will have capability to talk to any database engine across. Be it MySQL, be it Oracle, be it SQL Server, be it DuckDB, be it a flat file on S3, Parquet, and all of those. Now it allows you to do a federated access to a data which is residing on a different database, and you're making that call from Postgres. Now, in a typical migration, a customer might not have a single Oracle database to migrate. What it means that if I have a couple of Oracle databases, and I want to migrate only one of those, but those two databases are talking to each other. In case you're migrating one to Postgres, it still need to talk to one of the Oracle database, because you have moved only one database out of that. And that's where an FDW like Oracle FDW help you to achieve it. So you should have necessary connectivity from your Postgres database to Oracle database. And as the command implies, FDW require a source connection. Once you connect to it, you can actually query the data. So if you look at the sample, dual table is a table which was present in Oracle. I can query it from Postgres. And there are lots of new services coming up which are using this FDW feature. FDW library, which is foreign data wrapper library, is now spread across querying all the databases that we have across. And it's not limited to only database. You can query a flat file, be it Parquet, be it CSV, be it different format, store on S3 or a different GCS storage or of different cloud. So it's a good extension to have. And also one of the use cases that I have built on top of it is that in a heterogeneous migration, when you migrate from Oracle to Postgres, you also have to do a lot of validation. With this extension, we created an automated schema validation, where we query Oracle metadata, query Postgres metadata, and join them. So the best part of FDW is you can use that as a query. And there are lots of use cases that we have built on top of this. Now coming to the next section, how many of you know the temporary table feature of database? Which is, as the name suggests, it's temporary in nature, right? So it basically says that the structure exists, the data will be specific to session. And you will use temporary table for different use cases. It can be for performance, it can be for storing some data where you don't want to query it every time. Now, one of the tricky part of temporary table with Postgres is the structure. The structure is create table or temporary table or whatever you define is also temporary in Postgres, which means that data is temporary, but structure is also temporary, which means that if session one created a table, like in sample, if you see over there, we have a temp1 table created, the other session cannot see it. And that's where PGTT kind of extension come into picture. What it gives you is that it helps you to have the structure defined for the table once, and in across sessions, so below is session 2, you can always query that data or create that structure separately. So that allow you to do that. So in Postgres, temporary table has temporary structure or create table and also data. And this PGTT allow us to solve that for a lot of customer coming from different RDBMS, mostly for Oracle, also for SQL Server or different use cases. Okay. Now, when I talk about production readiness, if you talk about banks, insurance domain, all of those have a strong regulatory and compliance need. And some of those compliance need is about having auditing for the operation that you do on databases. And operation in databases can be of any form. It can be a DDL, it can be a read, it can be a write, it can be of anything. Now, whenever I talk about production readiness, PG audit is something that always every customer asks for. Because you want to know what operation is being done, by whom, at what time, and who has done it. Right? And what PG audit also give us is that it gives us a lot of configuration to have it defined a different way. So I'm just sharing you the different configuration of PG audit, where it define you to do auditing for a user only, on a particular operations, and all of those. So it gives you a liberty to audit. And when I say audit rights, it's also an balance between performance. In simple terms, I cannot audit each and every operation that is happening in databases. That will overkill my database due to that overhead. So auditing has to be streamlined, and it has to be with an answer that what is the minimum audit that you need that is must to have and meet the regularity or compliance. And that's what PG audit give us an overview, right? So let's assume that for a session, I just want to audit a write or DDL. So I can enable that for a session, do the necessary operation. And when I try to view the audit information, I can always view it in the Postgres log. So this is a snapshot from RDS where I have enabled an auditing for a session, and it can give us an audit information about what was performed and what was not. You can do it for your deployment. You can do it for a specific root access or super user access that you're doing from databases. So it's not that, the idea is not to audit each and every stuff, audit what is needed and must to have based on the regularity and compliance. And also just to give you an example, one more example, over here, I can define a different auditing strategy for different users. So my user test one, over here, I'm auditing only DDL for it. So if you log in with that user, you can only logs the DDL. And for other user, I can want to do a read and write. So it gives you a lot of control on what and of what to audit and how to audit as part of it. So it does not overkill your databases by logging a lot of stuff, and it helps you to define a lot of configuration. And again, PG audit is part of default contribly, which come as part of Postgres, but available as part of extension. Okay, so all of those extensions require some prereq, right? So in case you're well aware of those, you can pre-plan your database to have those extensions beforehand. Okay, now this is a recording where we are trying to do some of the components. So I'll just let you go through it, and also I'll just walk it over. When we talk about partitioning, we also have to talk about maintenance of it. Now let's assume you have a date partition, which is daily partition. But you also want an automated way, because time is always moving ahead, right? You always want an automated way where your future partition are always adding up to your table. So currently we are on June month. So, and we want to have a partition for July or next month. We can always pre-plan those with an extension which is available in Postgres, which are PG partment, which allow you to ease out your partition maintenance, create partition based on the need that you have. It can be from a different interval, weekly, monthly, daily, hourly, whatever is our use case. And also you combine that with a different extension, which is PG cron. Now, as the name suggests, it is something related to scheduling, where you can schedule your maintenance activity with PG cron and automate overall partition maintenance. Now, this ease out your overhead of monitoring partition and creating it proactively or reactively primarily, and then you can automate it with those. Now, this is one of the known pattern in Oracle, because it has a feature which is called as interval partition. It means that Oracle automatically create a partition as and when new record is inserted. And you might not have that feature in Postgres, but how we are achieving it is through partition. So PG partment, PG cron become your migration pattern to help you build those partition maintenance with Postgres. Okay, now when we talk about procedure language, so if I just give you stats, right? If I talk about heterogeneous migration, which is happening between Oracle to Postgres, and if an overall effort is 100% days, conversion takes 45 to 15% days based on how complex the customer is and how enterprise it. So conversion takes a lot of time when we talk about migration. And when we talk about conversion, we always talk about procedural code. If I talk about Oracle development that has happened past decade or before that, most of the business logic were put in procedures. Because at that point of time, that's what one of the easiest way to scale your services and application, because we didn't have a serverless, Lambda, and all of those to scale your calls. Now, hence, a legacy Oracle database might have a lot of procedural logic. Now, one of the differences that you get when you migrate to Postgres is, if you look at this sample that I'm putting over here, I'm referencing a table, a column which is column 1. And if I created that function, the function creation was success. And that's an issue, because as part of creating objects, any database engine follows a step of hierarchy or step of call that it needs to do. Some of those are syntax checks, some of those are semantic checks. When we talk about semantics, it means that whether that object exists or not, you have to check all of those. And that's where this is an issue. So what happens is, a developer on Postgres will deploy an object, will say that it is deployed and it is done, but answer is it is not done. Once you call it for the first time, as you can see in the demo, it will give an error that the column does not exist. And that's where one of the tool extension come in, which is PLPG check. So it's a linter tool. What it does is it basically scan your code and give you warnings, error, which might occur during your first execution of the function. This is an extension which is not supported in most of the managed service that I talk about of Postgres, but it is available for you to install on your EC2 or on-prem setup of Postgres. So it is something that you can always install and make sure that you are identifying the error in your converted code or developed code before it is actually run. So you can use PLPG check to review your code, give you an exception before the actual first run happens. And it helps you to accelerate the conversion process. As I was giving you stats, right? 40 to 50% times goes in conversion. But if you use a tool like this, you can always reduce those time. And whenever we reduce time, you're also reducing cost. So that's what one of the prime driver for any DB is to have, right? Like reducing time and cost both together. Okay, so this is my last slide, and I just wanted to not overwhelm you with a lot of extension. The idea was to share you the most used extension that we talk about, performance, auditing, and all of those, but also give you some of the must known or good to have, right? When we talk about Postgres, we also talk about bloating or fragmentation, which means that if my table size is 100 GB, but I'm actually occupying a data which is only of 1 GB, I have 99 GB of data which is fragmented, right? And that's where PG repack help us to delete those bloat. So it helps us to clean out those and make sure that it is your fragmentation reduced and your storage reduced. In same way, we have PG logical, which allow you to replicate or change data capture from one Postgres to another Postgres. A very important tool that we use for moving data across downstream or migrating. This is a new addition, right? So now if you look at the database evaluation, now lots of things is being basically conceptualized to have everything in databases, be it analytics, be it in-memory, be it vector processing, be it all of those, right? So Hydra is also one of the extensions which enable analytical or in-memory columnar processing, which accelerate your aggregation query or real-time analytics. So that is also available as part of extension. Okay. And again, a part of performance. So now this is always a nightmare for a lot of DB, right? Where a user come and say that, look, my query ran yesterday and there was some issue and I don't know what was the problem. Now the challenge is you cannot go back in time and understand it unless that happened again for you. Now auto explain is a feature where you can enable and log those query as and when an issue happened. So that whenever a user complain, or you can have your monitoring where you can go back and see which query was taking more time, and it will be available as part of a log. And there's also one tool which goes by name as PG Badger in Postgres, where it analyzes your logs and give you a report in an HTML fashion to get an output out of it. This is Anonymizer is also one of the extensions that is used a lot, where you want to do a dump of a production data for testing in a non-prod, but you also want to take care of PII, which is your personally identifiable information, and basically mask it. So it helps you to mask those information as part of taking dump. So Anonymizer is also one of those that do take care of providing it. Okay. So the simple idea behind extension is to tell you that knowing Postgres is good, but knowing extension is better. So if you know extension, it gives you an edge to have an value-add conversation with your customer, because once you understand the problem, the solution might be an extension. It might not be available in latest version of Postgres or databases. There might be some extension which someone is building or shipping as part of open source community, which you can use to leverage and fill those gaps. Okay. So this is the last extension, which is password check, where you basically checks whether your password is compliant or not. But I put a star because I always feel this is something which is now legacy. You don't have to actually have a username password as your user authentication. It has to be something which is autonomous and done by a different party, right? So, and lots of database do provide that. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to end my talk, and these are some of the handlers of my social media where I do post and talk about Postgres or database or in general about migration. So if you want, do follow it, and thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this insightful session from IDBOps Open Source Database Meetup 16. We hope you found Deepak Mahto's presentation on key Postgres extensions valuable. We will be releasing videos featuring our next 3 speakers soon. Stay connected with us by subscribing to our channel for more informative content. We invite you to join us at our next event to continue learning and networking with professionals in the field of open source database management.